All right, should be all live. Should be all good to go. Obviously, we're going here a bit early today. This might be loud. Sorry, it wasn't. Um, Figured we just kind of hop on here and ramble for about half an hour. It's really unlikely that I'll be live in between the Open and the All Star race, just because that's it's a tight window, and not really because I'm making a lot of lineups. It's more so just I think it's just easier to talk about it now. Um, because the final three drivers in the All Star race, like that really doesn't matter, depending on exactly what you're doing. We really don't have much interest in either one of those guys. Um, I wanna ask those that are here, obviously, we did a very, very intensive, video yesterday that a lot of people enjoyed, that was really, really spot on. I mean, um, really up until the last lap, and mainly, I know some of you guys did extremely well. I was more so heavy on Russia Caruth, obviously, and he was the guy who hit, Corey Heim when he spun, but entering the last green light checkered even before, going into regulation and stuff, because there's really only one big yellow yesterday, the lineups and the analysis was killing it. We still cashed. Like, if you even played my stuff remotely, like, you cashed by, like, a country mile. Um and so with the All-Star race today, I'd rather have your guys' input on if you want me to do that again as well. What's going on, Alex? Um, Mainly because, like, obviously this is like a one-off event for NASCAR. Obviously, we have races like it. We'll look at the previous All-Star races and stuff, but um, at least when I always look at the All-Star race and stuff, like All-Star race, the duels and stuff like. Although the duels are probably more enjoyable just because there's more flip flopping and stuff you can do here. You just need the main lap leader, and if you don't hit that, you're done. Or if you hit it, you got to still hit everything else. And so, kind of wanting more input in the chat today. I'll kind of look at whatever you guys want to. I don't have the projections up on the site yet, not because they're not done, but like for this example, and I think what would make this video probably more enjoyable, which we're gonna do like we did yesterday, to where we'll look at kind of my stuff, anticipating what SaberSim is using, anticipating what the field is using, really doing this in order to show you, what you guys should be doing on a, on a slate by slate basis, and then obviously, showing what goes on behind the paywall and the paywall streams, and then yet again, a bit of house cleaning and stuff. I'll be in Dallas next week, so I probably won't have a live stream or projections up for the trucks since they queue and run the same day. Still haven't looked to see if Xfinity queues Saturday or Friday. If they qualify Friday, I'll have projections up. If they queue Saturday, well, I won't, because I'll be at the convention in downtown Dallas tomorrow. So I guess let's start off by looking at what kind of SaberSim is going with really quick. Obviously, well, I mean, we really can't, I guess, because I haven't checked it yet, obviously. But SaberSim, as stated, the way that they do stuff, like, they don't have their projections up yet. So that kind of defeats the point. I didn't even. I at least thought they at least have some of the guys up, but I forgot they use highly intuitive or highly detailed, software and stuff, and they can't run without the three guys in the fucking race. Um, so very quickly, I don't have projections for laps led and fast laps up. We'll go through that as we look through, but this is more so where I have kind of everybody laying at the moment here. Obviously, looking at the All-Star winner, second place on the vote, finishing 12th, 15th, and 18th respectively. But when we're looking at kind of where I'm anticipating people run and stuff, now I think the favorite to lead laps. Actually, let's start looking at the other uh all-star races really fast and other Wilkesboro races and stuff to get a gist here. But yet again, the main focus, or the main thing that we're looking at or to note, is obviously we only have 23 people in this field. Okay, it's going to be really difficult for anybody to like really score under like 29 points and stuff. When we're looking at these races here, and yet again, if you have access to this stuff and you're looking at it in more detail, which I suggest you do even after the fact here. Some of these races are including the Open. Some of them are including the main races, where we're mainly looking at where people are or how people are performing here. So obviously on your screen, we're looking at the two Opens and the two races here, just to get a idea of where we're seeing laps and stuff come from. When we're looking at North Wilkesboro, yet again, if this is too small, you can open it on your own screen or the get a subscription to us and use it. But when we're looking at, obviously the two main races here, obviously you have Logano starting first, finishing first last year with 199 laps led, only 46 fast laps. We look at Larson in the year before when they were exploring the option tires, right? And Larson just took tires on a completely different strategy than the field, and the field just gave it to him after he started 16th, led 145. I don't know if that is necessarily comparable, because Larson, started 16th, finishes first. Yes, Larson started in the back of the field today. I don't believe that the field would let somebody just flip-flop him like they did with Larson, where they just let him run away with the race. But this does indicate that, another situation of if you're up front, you can lead, a good portion of the race. Obviously, we saw Keselowski and Bell, lead. Brad a little bit more contested late in the race because, him and Reddick stay out on old tires and stuff. Obviously, Chastain is attempting to get by him. William Byron's attempting to get by him. They just weren't able to. Whereas Bell had a much more commanding, runaway of his two stages and stuff. And when we're looking at these races, obviously your main lap leader is going to come from up front. Now, what does that look like in terms of today, right? And the reason why I'm looking at things like this is, first and foremost, please let me remove these really fast, just so we can kind of see where the highlights are of people who are anticipating either run well or hit a value or somewhere along those lines here. And yet again, none of this is final. Obviously, it hasn't been uploaded. This is more so as I just go through things. Stenhouse might be a bit high, giving him 14th. But I think, most likely Burton ends up being the worst play on the slate in terms of, upscale or upside and stuff. But what we're really looking at is, when we're looking at the scoring ranges, obviously we're limited on the amount of laps, but we're saying obviously the median is like 38, 40, 41, which, in the truck series and other situations, that's much like we're trying to find place differential, obviously, whatever. This race we only have 23 people, and so, obviously, 38 and being the low end of your top 10 scorers, that's going to come a lot easier from a lot of people. Okay, so one thing to note, or the main thing that I typically pay attention to in this, the Busch Clash or whatever, and even this one's different from the Busch Clash, from the amount of speed that you just have running away up front, right? But we're not really concerned on salary. Obviously, I remove these because I just like being able to see the colors. That just makes it way, way easier for me. But when we're looking at the salary, right, obviously Hamlin and Larson are very close to just hitting value right off the bat. Now, Hamlin ran in the back of the field yesterday. Obviously, the slowest car on track. I would be extremely shocked to see him actually run that slow compared to the rest of the field in this actual race. I just don't imagine that, especially when we look at Hamlin going through the field last year and at previous short track races. I'm not concerned with Hamlin's speed. Secondly, with Larson obviously starting 19th and stuff, it's really, really likely that both these individual drivers probably finish in the top 7 at the end of this race, especially when we're looking at the other people. Now, you can't pass the next gen car, obviously. Short track racing sucks, but still, just head to head between their equipment and Larson, Stenhouse, Austin Dillon, Cindric, potentially Briscoe, and then obviously Suarez. I mean, that's like 6-7 positions for these guys alone. Would we get the yellows, and especially the one late, like the one late in the race, the promoters provisional, which I imagine we get. I mean, the only way it goes away is if we get a yellow before that. Provisional has to be thrown before 220 if it's gone green. I have to imagine NASCAR ends up throwing a yellow because I just don't see a yellow coming naturally in this race, really at all. I think that just benefits people like Larson and Hamlin, who are just probably going to swing for the fences. Anyway, when we're looking at the salary and stuff, salary really doesn't matter. Okay. And it really doesn't start to matter if we run into a situation where Keselowski leads, Chastain leads, or Logano leads at 92. Just due to their cheapness and pricing and stuff, if they end up scoring 60, 70, 80 points, it doesn't really matter. And salary is no longer a thing to even like constrict us in terms of building lineups and stuff. So, at least on my stuff, when I'm looking at who potentially has like real upside in this race, okay, Tyler Reddick's only starting here because he got thrown on the outside lane. Obviously, he stays out with Keselowski. On all tires, gets passed, and then kind of just gives the position to Barry late in the race and stuff. Otherwise, he'd be starting 11th. So, in terms of guys who were actually running decently, especially when we're looking at these heat races and stuff, if you look at these lap times made by abnormally distributed and stuff. Also, I didn't pull these. Obviously this is his stuff, but when we're just looking at where these guys are at, the glorious part of running I don't know why it was 75 laps. That's like so excruciatingly long, but everybody finished where they should have been in terms of speed, right? So then we're connecting the dots of why was somebody slow, why was somebody not slow, why did somebody, like I firmly believe like Hamlin sandbagging. I'm not saying he's going to win the race, but there's just no way he's actually this slow. When we're looking at the rest of the field in terms of where they finish, especially stage 2, because everybody pitted, everybody finished where they should have finished. Okay, the only place that we saw potentially guys, not finish where they should is, Reddick from Heat 1 and stuff. So when we're looking through and seeing guys who, obviously if the median, to be a top 10 scorer is like 38, 40 points, you're looking at 6th, 7th, and 8th and stuff. And we're getting much closer to that range of 49, 47, 46 and stuff. So who are people, regardless of what happens in this race, that are able to do that pretty much straight up? Obviously, that's Larson, Hamlin. I would say Reddick, Josh Berry, Logano, Byron. That's why I haven't added any of this stuff, because really your main lap leader doesn't matter when we're analyzing like who's actually in play. Obviously, it'll matter like build wise and stuff, but who leads early and what they end up doing is kind of irrelevant. We need the raw points and who's expected to walk their way into mid 40s, more likely 50 points in this race. And so those drivers are these drivers that are highlighted here, or at least showing up here and stuff. So if we're building that way, which I was really hoping Saberson would have stuff that we could build with, but I guess we're gonna have to do this manually right now. And we'll talk lap leaders in a second. I mainly just want to talk builds really fast here. Mainly looking at, is it possible to even use Larson and Hamlin together? And I would envision these lineups working primarily with the Keselowski plays. Okay, now I think head-to-head, in terms of leading laps, Bell is overwhelmingly the favorite to get here. But when we look at what happens if Keselowski even leaves a minuscule amount of laps, which realistically probably falls in the line of anywhere between 30 and 50, and I got Keselowski, finishing 5th or 6th or whatever. He leads 54. We're already looking at 42 points, right? Leads 30, finishes, 5th, 6th, whatever, right? Right at 36, If he does anything over like 40 and doesn't get spun or taken out, there's a real chance he's scoring, right in that range. Even if the ratio of fast laps to laps led are like 4-1, hell, even less, he's looking right at 42 points. So, like, even if I don't like Keselowski from a realistic perspective of how likely is the lead laps, he's very much a play today in terms of building, trying to nail in as many guys as you can score, at or over 40 points. When we then look at Bell, okay, now Bell is so expensive at, 98 starting second. Those lineups are going to rely on him obviously leading laps and stuff. This is not necessarily a race that I look at as like, the normal projection set or the normal week of going in or whatever. Like if we're looking at Bell, and yet again, we don't need to have a projection of like 188 for somebody to lead laps. That's kind of irrelevant. Okay. He's going to be working whether he scores 85 points or whether he scores, really, obviously, if he's winning the race, he's going to be scoring probably, mid 60s and stuff. And it's more so just construction. So, what makes more sense from a construction standpoint? So, what I want to really look at is how likely are the builds. I guess I could have done this in SaberSim and left the three guys open and stuff, but we really don't need to do that at the moment. We can just manually do this. Actually, no. Let's just go ahead and see. This will kill us. This will get some time. Let's go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and look at these lineups really fast and see kind of where we're going. And so yet again, when we're looking at the open race as this loads, okay, why is it, kind of, why does it really not matter of who's going to make the open race? Okay, when we're as Saberson loads, sorry, oh no, what are we doing here? Because I have that open. There we go. When we're looking at this open race, specifically looking at the guys who started last or who made it in, this will be on page 2. We'll go ahead and analyze Noah, Bubba, and Ty Gibbs in last year's race. So obviously these are guys who are what I would argue middle of the road between Noah Gragson and Ty Gibbs on a short track here, in a field of 23 drivers. Okay. Unlike a normal race of where you start in the back of the field and you like gain halfway through, it's much more impressive because this is pretty much the top half of the field in any Cup Series race. Seeing Gregson finish 11th, mainly run in, 12th. And then same thing with Gibbs, who, ran anywhere from 11th to 17th at his price tag. It doesn't matter. We look at their scoring, and technically anybody outside of, if Gibbs was like 84 or whatever, right? These guys are smashing, value out of the block, but there's less people to race last year. That's true. I forgot Keselowski, Bell, and Suarez all died. All these guys ran into issues. A lot of big names actually struggled last year's race, which I did not remember happening. We look at the first year, which Reddick, big name. Also, that's another thing. When we're looking at the field for the Open, like obviously SVG starting first, but like outside of Preece, really, like there's no big names coming out of the Open last year or anything like that. And so when we're looking here, obviously Chastain starts the back of the field, or Stenhouse starts in the back of the field. Oh, actually, that's not even that. We have Gibbs again, Barry, and Gregson, which right now I have wrong one. Anticipating whoever wins the race, finishing around, 9th or finishing around 11th, 13th or whatever. With the other two guys being slow, obviously we can adjust this for whoever it is. But for most situations, we can use anybody else. Mainly what I'm going to do here is look at these lineups when they're done. And we can use anybody in the same like salary range to, insert or whatever if these guys would work out. Anyway, what I'm waiting to do mainly here is look at these builds and see what we're doing. Now, yet again, I didn't input any projections for Keselowski or Bell or Chastain at the moment, because if I'm looking at a lineup that has them, it's assuming that they are, the main lap leader or whatever. So projecting somebody for like 87 points doesn't make any sense right now. If we're just looking at how lineups are being made, like for example, we look at the top 1500 and we want to take a look at where like Keselowski is, right? Like where these lineups are, So realistically, these are lineups that would end up using, Keselowski and stuff. So obviously, very heavy on Larson. But what I'm wanting to look at and be curious on is if they use Hamlin at all and what these lineups are looking like. So obviously, we're at 49.9, 49.7. Obviously, these will be much closer on the salary range. But I mainly just want to see that this pretty much is viable. Let me move this here. So, like for example, like this one here has obviously Larson back to the field. Where Chastain in third because we're using the 7K driver. So you could either look at that as Chastain in third or any of these 7K guys who potentially race their way in, which, Priest, Gregson, or anybody around this range. Barry in the 11th position, which I think is actually a good play today. Obviously, Hamlin in the back of the field, Bowman ninth. I think this is a very, very decent line with you either choosing to use Chastain or one of the guys from the Open and stuff like that. What we're mainly trying to do here is figure out where these builds are going to go. So that's obviously like with Keselowski leading. For those that think Bell is going to do decently now, obviously we only have 66 right now because he is projected poorly, poorly from a point per dollar play right now. But this still gives you, pretty much what would be 66 best lineups with Bell and stuff, and continuing on. This is typically what we're doing in the paywall shows and stuff. Analyzing where people are going. What is it? Understanding where the fill is going, understanding what constructions are being used, so on and so forth here. So if you guys do have any questions or anything, do feel free to talk, or ask me. So obviously we're looking at Larson. Let me get this thing back over here. Larson, Bell, Barry again at 75, Austin Dillon, which could either be used as him starting 15th or an open driver. Same thing with Cindric or whatever, right? And then Reddick 11th. So obviously this seems like one of the higher scoring, Bell lineups and stuff like that. So what are we seeing from here? What are we able to determine? Now, yet again, at this point, I'm just using my projections because Samerson doesn't have anything. I'm assuming most sources and projection stuff need the entire field on there to build their projections and stuff. That's why I just haven't uploaded mine yet. Because in a race like this, I'm always really hesitant. If I was to make projections, which will probably look very similar to this, I think realistically between your front runners and yet again outside of like people leading laps or whatever, I think a realistic projection for Keselowski is like 35 laps led. I think Bell, yet again, this is just me what I'm thinking, that would indicate that Keselowski is not the main lap leader. I think Bell would probably be secondary to that. 120 is probably a decent projection for him. And really past that, we're already using, 155 to 250 laps. If Bell runs away with it, the end of the race probably seems much closer to 190, if anything like that. So I just don't see the reason of pigeonholing yourself on or at least for me, pigeonholing a projection source by, really pushing one main lap leader over the other. And this is much more I want to see where builds are going and trying to anticipate where ownership is, especially outside of the main lap leaders and stuff. My gut feel lends itself towards Keselowski being the second highest projected lap leader, with Bell being first. I think there may be instances to where the clean air, the starting position number one, kind of bumps Keselowski up more on a projection standpoint. Maybe as a win upside. Like I think it gives him the win probably more so than not. Whereas I think a real projection for Keselowski should probably be in the same range of like 37 points, probably 37 to 42. So what is that here? 37 to 44 probably is the range that Keselowski is. So what would a media to that be? Probably closer to like 39. Probably like 39 is probably a decent mean projection for Keselowski's outcomes today. Anyway, I mean, this is just kind of redundant for your lap leaders. Anyway, let's try and figure out where other ownership is going to go. So regardless if you're using Bell or Keselowski, it seems like Barry's going to be a good play at 75 based on what Wood Brothers have done so far. I'm also, I did see a question by Alex here, talking about the green flag data and stuff. Yeah, it'll be anything you ever want to see on the dashboards for any of the series. It'll always be under the races tab. If you want to see the amount of yellows, the amount of green flag laps, the amount of people left out of the lead lap, the interior will always be on this side. I know you found it, but I saw that late, so I'm sorry. I'm not looking at all, or I'm not paying any attention to the practice data that we had from Friday. I think that's absolutely useless. It's days away. People had a full race to make adjustments on. A lot of those can be, or a lot of people in that race won't, or a lot of people in that practice aren't even in the race. I don't see that as a usable data source. I don't see really focusing on the heat race data any more so that everybody finished where they probably should have finished. I think that's the end all be all of the data sources that we have entering this race for this specific thing of this weekend, the practice of the heat races. I just don't see a reason to really focus on that data source. We're looking more so at where people are at in short tracks, where people are at in other instances and stuff like that, and even like the track performance with only 2 North Wilkesboro races, and with really the first race just being thrown away with them giving it to Larson. Like I don't think the first one is much useful at all, or is really useful at all. So when we're looking at the 2025 performance of this, we are looking at tracks that are similar to North Wilkesboro, which would be the tracks used in the Dominator tab, which is more so just the 2 North Wilkesboro races and the Bowman Gray races. If you're manually doing stuff, you could probably add, Martinsville and Phoenix if you really want to. But we're so limited on stuff. Just getting an idea of where guys are at. That's why, I just think Hamlin was sandbagging. I just really do. I can't imagine Hamlin is actually that terrible this weekend. I mean, this is a race where I would highly advise you to not just throw money at this. Like, just move on to next week and stuff. I really really like the idea of using both. Let's see if we can do that really fast here, because I like it. I was kind of goofing around here, but if you do Bell, Larson, because obviously this stuff loves Larson, and Hamlin together, that's 10 lineups. Obviously, this can be a combination of either the guys in the top 20 right now or any of the people in the open and stuff. But I actually really, really like having the idea of using both Larson, Bell, and Hamlin together, especially when it doesn't really seem like pricing is going to really matter at all. I kind of just want to try and get as many raw points in there as possible. So obviously, at the moment, we just have my stuff here. But when we're super super tight on, well, actually, let me check that before we start yapping around here. Look at last year's race again. So where did Are there any major jumpsters? Like, obviously, I already like Hamlin today. We both like, regardless if you're gonna play him or not. Hamlin and Larson starting last, third to last, fourth to last, and stuff. Seem like good plays. Trying to see who else kind of drove through the field that could potentially do that in today's race that we need to look at specifically here. Like Keselowski started second. This is now, I don't know if it's going to be 16th. Obviously, if it's 16th, he's just obliterated, right? But like, I mean, Keselowski fell through the field last year. And then what happened with Bell? How fast did Keselowski fall through this field? Which he didn't, so I was wrong. Okay, he starts second, falls to fourth, so had top 5 speed till we got to lap 100 yellow, whatever the case may be. Stupid stuff happens, and then has a major issue and finishes 17th stuff. We're doing 250 laps today, which is like so long. I don't know why we're doing 250 laps today, right? So like, if we're looking at Keselowski potentially being in this range, and what did Bell do? When did he fall through the field last year? So both these drivers who ended up performing very bad last year, which I assume, I don't recall off the top of my head if there was a crash or overall not coming out of this, but obviously they were both affected. These guys maintain a position in the top 5 all day. That's like, I mean, that's where I have him. -3, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I got Keselowski right, in the range anywhere between like 3rd to like 7th, right? It's 29 points with nothing led, but like him leading like 35 laps is like so drastically huge today. Because all he has to do is beat Bell and just lead for like 5 minutes. I mean, even if it's less extreme, this one might not work. 35. He needs to at least do like 39 points to even be viable. But what this is showing, last year's stuff, these guys who were up front, I mean, they stayed in the top 5 all day, up until this happened, up until, last quarter. Very, very, very high chance that the race happens like that. What happened to Suarez last year? Suarez is somebody who, like, we just don't envision as having, a decent car. Realistically, does he fall through the field or does he kind of stay? Now, he does fall through the field. He is slow, so he ends up getting past, 50 laps in after starting second, right? So obviously, I mean, but you look at recent form, you look at where these guys are expected to do. You would envision Bell and Keselowski, kind of hold their position. Obviously, Suarez kind of falls through the field. But with it being so hard to pass here and the field spreading out and stuff, like, it's gonna be really, really hard to come up with a ton of place differential for any of these guys up here. Really throughout the field. That's why I think Barry, Reddick, Larson, and Hamlin are your main 4 contenders who are going to be getting place differential. And it seems to me like you can get Barry, you can get Hamlin, you can get Reddick, you can get Larson. You can get 3 of those 4 very, very easily in lineups. That would indicate to me that they're probably going to be on the higher end, higher owned type of stuff in this race. Those are the guys that I'd probably focus on. It just going to depend on if you want to go with Bell, if you want to have Keselowski in there, or if you want to take shots on Logano or Chastain. But I mean, like, I don't know, it's the All-Star race. We're kind of at a standstill of what we can do from a real projection. I don't see any other questions and stuff. I mean, I know it's an All-Star race. I know it's happening like 6 hours or whatever. But I mean, that's really my preview of stuff, especially without any other data sources or anything to look at here. I think for the most part, which I'll upload final projections when the Open is over, so it'll be a quick turnaround and stuff. But I don't really envision much in the range of from Denny Hamlin to Logano really changing. It'll just be whenever I finalize the projections for these guys up here and whatever I have to adjust for the 3 guys entering this race. I don't know, stand or the final, my final thing is just play the raw points in whatever source you're using and however you're building, whether you're hand building, using other stuff, whatever. Try and fit as many of the raw points as possible. mainly because, if we look at, well, let's see. What did these guys? I mean, let's, kind of last thing here, which you can do on here is, I mean, let's see. Let's just see where everybody kind of scored, right? Go to race results. We're gonna look at DraftKings points. How did people score? 116, 69 for your main guys or whatever, right? That's not important. Your main lap leader is going to be all by themselves. But what is like third through like 10th doing? So we have a 58 last year, 51, a 50, 47, 43, 41, 40, 38, 35, 35. Those are your top 12. Okay. What was the one for 2023? Now it'll probably might even be a better thing to look at here since Larson blew the field away, since he took both place differential spots and nearly the entirety of the race in terms of laps led once he got up in front. And this might actually be a closer representation of what to expect today. So we have 112 for him, 63 for Reddick, your first two. We're kind of removing those and looking at the rest of the field. 56, 49, 49, 48. Actually, 49 even, 49 even, 48 2, 48 1, 47 9, 43 9, 43, 35, 29. Okay. So obviously a pretty substantial drop off between, the 11th place and the 12th place. In scoring because those guys are in the 20s, but everybody else is, by default in the 40s or high. Where are we at here? Okay, we're looking at this range here. I mean, we just got to be scoring 40s. We need raw points, kind of by any means necessary, and I think those means are Larson, Hamlin, Reddick, Barry. At the moment, I think those are like the four guys that I can see having the easiest pathway to 40 plus points in this race today. But yeah, that's mainly it. I know I got asked for Briscoe. I mean, I don't have an opinion by Jake. I don't know how you asked that question, my dog. I'm literally showing you what I think of everybody on the screen. I don't even know how that question even comes out of your little fingies for the stream. That's like an insane question to ask. If I'm actually showing my stuff on the screen, I don't even know why you're asking that type of question. That's a wild question to ask with everything on the screen. Anyway, I'll see you guys hopefully in a live stream next weekend. Probably, and I know for the Cup I'll probably do a stream early Sunday. I don't know if I get the other ones out and stuff since I'll be in Dallas. But anyway, best of luck. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.